Hello and welcome back, everyone. Since we have been talking about Notion this week, this tutorial is going to be a quick hack about learning how we can create certain equations that can help us manipulate variables so that we can actually use them to our advantage in terms of creating motion. So let's get started. All right, so what exactly is easing? If we think about it, easing is just another way for us to create an equation where we can control movement, right? So for instance, if we want an object to move from one point to another, we can use or create an equation where instead of it moving directly or jumping from its point A to point B, what we can create is we can create a very smooth effect by helping it slow down when it's moving towards its destination, right? Of course, this kind of equation is not only helpful in terms of movement, but it can also be applied in terms of color or in terms of size. The whole idea is that what kind of animation or what kind of an effect or feeling that you want to generate depending on the project or your idea, right? So this is just a very quick, easy hack of a quick, easy hack or a way of actually doing it. So we don't have to put in a lot of effort. And the way we kind of do it is if we think of it in terms of, let's say, movement at this point in time, right? Like taking this for an example. If we want this circle to move from this point towards this cursor, how will we be able to achieve that where it will start moving at a certain pace, but it will not jump from this point directly to this point, right? We have been doing this in the past, right? If we want, let's say, a circle to follow our mouse's position, it's been like literally attached to it, and it's kind of like really following exactly from the same pace. But how can we create like this gradual smooth effect? So one way for us to do that is that we can measure the distance between the X position of the circle and the X position of our mouse, right? And then we can find out the distance, right? This is simple because we can move gradually if we have identified the distance. And how we can do the gradual effect is that if we move only a certain percentage of the distance that we have identified at a time. So let's say in this case, if we are moving only 10% of whatever the distance is between the X position of the circle and X position of our mouse, it will help in terms of gradual transition from point A to point B. Remember, when it is moving from left all the way to right, this will happen over time, right? What it is doing is per frame, it is moving 10%, 10%, 10% of the distance. We need to remember that because it is already moving to its destination, the distance itself is also getting smaller over a period of time. So it will help us create a nice smooth effect, right? The way we can actually create this is this simple equation where, remember, variable is something where we can assign value over a period of time, right? So if whatever the position of X is, if we add the 10% of the distance, that's what we all need to do, is basically take the position X and then add 10% of the distance. And how we can do that is, this is basically helping us find out the distance, mouse X minus X. So basically the X position of mouse, which is basically the destination, and then subtract the X position of that object, which in this case is going to be the X position of the circle. Now, since we have identified the distance, we are going to find out 10% of that. So you can either, like, this is an easy way of shorthand way of writing 10%, this 0.1, because we are literally multiplying 0.1, which is actually 10 divided by 100. That's the same thing, right? And we are adding it to create or generate the new variable here. So let's see how we can kind of work and if we can kind of put it in our code. So let us get started. I'm going to start here again. All right. So before we begin, make sure that you have actually remixed your project. Make sure that you do that all the time. So here what we are going to do is, first of all, I've created here a background and we are going to create a circle, something that we know already. All right, and here we can create x, and then we can create height divided by 2, and then I am doing it circle. For now, initially, let's say if I say let x is 0, that's the same thing as me saying that, okay, x is basically, or the circle is being created at the center of this, of the canvas, right? So that's one way of doing things. If I want to change the x position over a period of time where I wanted to follow my cursor, we need to change the value of x, right? Remember, the way we have kind of learned it is that if I change, in fact, here I'm going to do is x is x plus, and now here I'm going to try and find out the distance. Our destination is mouse x, right? And then I'm going to subtract the x value of the circle, and then I'm going to put 10%. Of course, this is it. It doesn't have to be 10%. Like, you can literally do it, I don't know, 30%. You can do it 50%. That just controls the effect that you will create. It can be faster, or it could be slower, right? For now, we are just doing it 10%. Okay, so if we kind of do that, now you can see it has started to follow our cursor on the x-axis, right? And you can see how it is going big or small just because it kind of becomes, when it is closer to its destination, right? Like, you can see the effect happening because the distance becomes shorter and the 10% of the distance also becomes shorter, right? So we can actually kind of see the effect. But what if we wanted to move depending on our y position as well, right? We can do something simpler, right? We can create another variable, which is basically for y, let y is 0. And then here I can create a similar kind of equation, but for y. So I'm going to take the y position of the mouse and y position of the circle, and then do a 10% of that. And instead of this one here as a fixed value, I will replace it with the variable. So now that we have this, let's see how that works, right? So now it's like literally following my cursor with the x and y position, and we can see the effect it has. Another thing that you need to perhaps will be helpful for you to remember is here, if you remember from our some of our assigning operators that we discussed in our previous lessons, there are some additional ones which are basically a shorthand for us in terms of writing and assigning values. So for instance, if you notice in this one, what we are doing is that here we are continuously adding, we are basically creating a new value for this x, in which we are taking the previous value of x and adding something else to it. So instead of saying x is, or assign like x plus whatever, we can literally say x plus equals, and then we don't need to write this thing, x plus. So plus equal, basically, it means that you are not only adding certain value to the variable, but you are also assigning it. So it's a shorthand of way of writing. So this is technically the same as me saying x equals x plus, mouse x minus x. And why am I putting this in parentheses? Now, this is a regular algebra question where I am using 10% off, and I'm putting whatever the distance is being calculated. So this is something simpler, but then this shorthand is the same way as writing this whole thing. And you can literally do the same thing for this, and you don't have to write for y as well. However, this is not only applicable in terms of like add and assign value, but you can literally do that for subtract and assign. You can also multiply and assign, and you can also divide and assign value to the variable. and that becomes the new value. So let's see, maybe if you can use it in terms of, apart from motion, are there any other ways or other things that you can apply this kind of equation and create a different effect? See you next week.